One thing about me is when God says he wants me to talk about secret sins so that people can get freedom, I'm going to freaking talk about it. Because if he set me free from those things, it is absolutely my responsibility to listen to him and to obey him, even if it is uncomfortable. So, what is up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Whole Journey. Today, we are going to be talking about the secret sin of masturbation. And I know what you're thinking. Whoa, how did we get from weight loss to masturbation? Well, gluttony and sexual promiscuity and sexual sin are all still sin, and that's a lot of what we talk about here. I have a radical testimony of being set free from masturbation and sexual promiscuity. After struggling with it for a really long time, I was introduced to masturbation when I was very young and struggled with it for more than 10 years before I was set free. So if nobody else is going to talk about it, I want to talk about it. And I also want to talk about how I did not believe it was a sin for a really long time because it's not in the Bible as a sin, but how I now believe it's a sin and why. If you have any questions or comments and you do not want to comment it not anonymously, I'm going to link a QR code here for you to be able to submit a Google form anonymously so that you can ask questions or get feedback. And then also, if you have not already, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, turn on your alerts so that you never miss another episode. Like I said, this is called balanced living, not perfect living, okay? The only perfect one was Jesus. All right, let's start from the beginning. So I was introduced to masturbation at a very young age and struggled with it for almost half of my life up until I was radically delivered from it several years ago. At the same time that God told me to stop having sex with my boyfriend, he also told me that I needed to no longer participate in masturbation because it was affecting my spirit and my relationship with him. And I believe that he also told me at that time that it was a sin and explained to me why. So, context, it took me years and years and years of trying and praying and believing that I needed to stop doing this for me to actually have success stopping. So I have a radical testimony of being immediately delivered from it and have not struggled with it for several years by the grace of God. And I'm going to speak about it from the perspective of everything that I do now to make sure that I do not continue struggling with it. The first question I'm going to answer is masturbation a sin? And I'm going to start off by saying, what is sin? So sin is anything outside of the will of God that we are participating in. So let's take masturbation as something that is a result of sexual activity. We know that God created marriage between a man and a woman and sex to be enjoyed within marriage between a man and a woman in the sanctity and the covenant of that marriage. And an orgasm or sexual pleasure is produced as a result of sexual activity with your spouse, right? So if we take that pleasure outside of a relationship, outside of marriage, outside of sex, it not only becomes selfish and self-gratifying, obviously, but it also turns into an opportunity for the enemy to turn that into an addiction that leads us to lust more in our life. I'm going to be very transparent here. When I was struggling with masturbation, I was hypersexualizing everything. And we live in a culture that hypersexualizes a lot. A lot of the books that people around us read nowadays is literal pornography. And everybody talks about pornography habits, even in marriage, as if it's absolutely nothing to be concerned with. But sex was designed to be enjoyed in a marriage between two people. And if we keep bringing in these other things that are not our spouse, something is going to go wrong. When I was participating in this sin, it was like the floodgates were opened. Everything was causing these desires to stir up in me. And it was something that eventually I was relying on to even be able to go to sleep at night because I needed that release of hormones. I needed that release of dopamine or serotonin or oxytocin or whatever hormones are released during that. And it became a true literal addiction. So I told you guys that I was radically set free from it, but I also want to be very transparent that my lifestyle had to change immediately for me not to desire that sin and not to be tempted by that sin. So when God first told me that he did not want me to do that anymore, and he also did not want me having sex, I was still listening to very secular music. I was watching secular shows, I was reading secular things, and a lot of it had sex. You're going to think, oh, so you slipped into legalism and now you won't do this or that. I put up boundaries. These boundaries are important for me to still be able to live in sexual purity. If there's a sex scene that comes in on a movie, I literally close my eyes, fast forward, change the channel, whatever, until it's over. I used to listen to rap and R&B, and I was like listening to Somo and all this kind of stuff. And I still know all the words to those songs, but I do not continue to put that music in my soul. I do not understand how people can say, I don't understand why I struggle with that. First of all, you're listening to music about two people and it's describing stuff that you should absolutely not be participating in. So I literally had to clean up my playlists. I was watching season 1 of Bridgerton when God told me I needed to stop participating in that. Do you think I could still watch Bridgerton and not have the desire to do that after the show was over? No, I absolutely had to realize that what I was putting in my body was what I was going to get out. And it was also literally getting in the way of me being able to spend time with God, because I would be like laying in bed at night and praying and all this kind of stuff. And then I would have that desire to do that. And then I would do that. And then I wouldn't even want to talk to him anymore. And some of you may think, well, I don't have that problem. I can still talk to God. Be honest with yourself. Can you actually do that? And then immediately talk to God as if nothing else is different? And if you are, I want to challenge you. You probably need to dig a little bit deeper on how you're able to do that. Like if you've completely put that in a box and decided that that is nothing that's going to prevent you from talking to God, it probably means your conscience is completely seared in that area, and you need to take a look at what you think sexual purity is. So we know that if we use the example of what is marriage and how is sex produced in marriage, and then take it outside of marriage, that is a reason why it is a sin. But I also just want to challenge you. If you struggle with this sin, what are you thinking about? What are you picturing? What are you watching when you are doing that? And how does it affect the world around you? I struggled with pornography for, I think it was like a literal 2-week stint in college. And I was very fortunate that I was more disgusted with myself than I was appreciative of what pornography did for my brain, because I was able to get out quickly. And that is something that I am so incredibly thankful I did not have to deal with. Even though I was already literally actively having sex with other people, I was still protected from that pornographic addiction, right? So there was a woman who was supposedly a theologian and was talking about how masturbation is not a sin because it does not affect other people, and it's literally just something that we need in order for our bodies to be healthy. And when I asked her about that, she told me, no, it's not a sin. It's just something that is natural, and we are just animals. And first of all, we are not animals. We are made in the image of God. So that was the first point that was very wrong. But number 2, she never once asked what I was thinking about when I was doing it, my reason behind why I was doing it, and if other things were involved in why I was participating in masturbation. If she would have asked anything at all, I would have had to tell her, I am thinking lustfully about other people and situations and creating images in my mind with people who are not actively participating in this with me to be able to do that for myself. And guys, I'm not trying to be grotesque here, but sex is meant to be a partnership thing. It's not supposed to be one-sided where you're just picturing other people and things without their consent. Like, that's something that we need to take very seriously. It says in the Bible that if you look lustfully at another person, that you've committed adultery. That if you are angry towards your brother, that you've committed murder. There is such a fine line that we have to walk. And even if you can look at me right now and tell me that you can just picture a black void and effectively do what you need to do in order to get that release that you need, I still want to challenge you. Why is it necessary for you to do that? And why can you not find other outlets for those hormones? Physical activity does the same thing with those hormones as doing that does. So if you are not in a relationship and you're trying to figure out what you can do with that, go to the gym, go on walks, take a cold shower. There are those of us that have a higher sex drive that we think that masturbation and self-pleasuring is a way to reduce that sex drive, but I do not believe that is the case. Here's why. When I was participating in that, my sex drive was literally in floods. It's like I couldn't do anything without knowing that that was a way that I could get a release, and I was going to do that in order to stop having these feelings of like pressure and all these hormones and all that kind of stuff. And now, because of the boundaries and the barriers that I've set around me, and I know that that is not an option, I'm able to function more in the spirit of self-control, which is a fruit of the Spirit. I absolutely believe that we are supposed to be able to exercise sexual restraint, both with other people and with ourselves, until we are able to enjoy what God created for us to have inside of the bounds that He gave us to enjoy it. So, summarizing what I did, I cleaned up what I was listening to. I, to this day, make sure that the movies I watch, the music I listen to, the books I read do not contain that material. If I accidentally watch something that gets me riled up inside, I literally take it to God, I repent, I go on a walk, I drink some water, I tell myself, okay, I remember why I do not do this. I remember what my life looked like while I was doing it versus what my life looks like now. And guys, I would not go back. I would not go back to needing to do that all the time. I would not go back to being able to have those hormones dropped so that I am more productive or think more straight or whatever. Like, I would not go back to struggling with that if somebody paid me to. There are times where I am still tempted to do it. I have the thoughts that, oh, wow, that would just be great. You know, I would sleep better tonight, whatever. But I understand the repercussions of it, and my desire to stay right with God and to not introduce that stuff back into my life is so much greater than my desire to feel that pleasure for a short amount of time. There are so many things that we do that we convince, oh, if we just do it a little bit, or if we just do it in the right way, or if we just make sure we have, like, we're on the right thought process, it is still sin. If you are looking for some scriptural context on why it is important not to participate in sexual sin, even if it is with yourself and not with other people, and it's technically not harming anybody else, I just want to read Romans 12, 1-2. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good and pleasing and perfect will. I do not believe that God designed Christians to be able to live in the world so much so that we are reading smut and listening to porn and watching porn or whatever, and are participating in masturbation that is so glorified by the world. We live in a very sex-positive culture in a way that is rebellious and sinful and vulgar, and it is so outside of the will of God. I am very sex-positive in marriage. I am absolutely sex positive in marriage, but I think that fire and contained in a fire pit is great, but a fire that has not been contained can burn down a whole forest. And we need to be so careful as Christians, as believers, even as new believers, what we are participating in that could then destroy other areas of our life. I do not want anything that I'm doing with my body, what I'm eating, what I'm drinking, what I'm listening to, what I'm participating in, whatever, to destroy my ability to be a living, holy, pleasing sacrifice to God. That was tainting my ability to be a sacrifice to Him, and I'm not going to keep participating in that sin because it is not good for me. I also just want to share what Jesus says in Mark 7:20. He went on, what comes out of a person is what defiles them, for it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come: sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All of these evils come from inside and defile a person. Now, we know that what we feed ourselves spiritually is going to come out of our heart. Out of the mouth comes the abundance of the heart. So if we are continuing to surround ourselves and fill ourselves up with things that are sexually explicit, are feeding into that desire, that is why many of us will continue to struggle with these things up until the point that we make a decision that it is beneficial to miss out on things so that these other things that are not good do not keep coming out of us. I also just want to remind you that things that we desire are not always good for us. There are things that I desire to do every single day that are not good for me, that I will not allow myself to participate in because I know it is not good for me. Temptation itself is not a sin, but participating in these sins is what is a sin. I also know that there are some of you that feel like the torture and the torment and the burden of trying not to participate in that is more detrimental than actually participating in it. That is a lie from the enemy. If we are seeing that the only way to get relief is to participate in something that's causing us shame or guilt, that is literally the enemy. There are so many things in our lives that we think, it's more detrimental for me to try to resist doing it than it is for me to just go ahead and do it. Like, it must not be that harmful. That is a trap and a lie of the enemy. We need to be extra careful when we get relief doing something, because that is the enemy's way of trying to teach us and train us and get us to desire to do sin more and more and to continue to rely on sin, and all sin leads to death eventually. If you are watching this right now and are actively struggling with masturbation, I am going to pray over you, and I want you to know that there is absolutely freedom in this. If you have tried for years and years and years to stop participating in this, to stop watching pornography, to stop reading smut, to stop whatever you're doing, I just want to let you know that the fruit of the Spirit also includes self-control, and God can absolutely fill the void that these habits and this sin is filling in your life. So I'm just going to pray for you right now. God, I thank you that in faith, we can come to you and hear the word of other people's testimonies and read your word and know that you are able to set us free from anything that we are struggling with. And God, I just pray over this person right now, and I ask that you would come in and show them why they are struggling with this sin, and that you would radically set them free from the chains of bondage of masturbation, watching pornography, reading smut, whatever it is, whatever their trigger is, and that you would allow them to see the joy and the hope and the peace in a life free from this. God, if they still do not believe that it is a sin, I ask that you would have conversations with them about what your will for them is and what your design for this activity is, so that they can see your perspective on this. But I just command right now that anything that is trying to continue to perpetuate this sin in this person's life is being bound back. I thank you that sin is not something that we play with. It is something that we bring to you repeatedly until we are completely set free. So I just ask that you would bind the enemy back, that you would bind back the lies, the shame, the guilt, all of it, so that they can hear your voice, so that they can know you, know your design for their life, know your intent and your will and your love for them, so that they can experience complete freedom in this area. God, I ask that you would just continue to pour your grace and your mercy and your peace out on them up until the day that they realize that they no longer struggle with it anymore, and they are able to live in complete freedom from this sin. If you have stuck around this far, go ahead and drop the sword emoji in the comments below. I am thankful that I have the opportunity to share my testimonies on these fronts and to talk about these things openly with you guys, because I needed somebody to have this conversation with me years ago, and I did not have anyone to have that conversation. So it is an honor to me every time that God tells me to talk about something like this, and I hope that I explained it to the best of my ability, and that God will use this exactly how he needs to in order to help those that are needing it. But I'm going to keep talking about uncomfortable topics on this channel because somebody has to say it. Somebody has to say it. Somebody has to talk about gluttony. Somebody has to talk about getting out of uncomfortable things, getting out of hard sin, what happens after trauma. And I'm going to keep talking about that. So I hope you have a blessed day. Thank you for coming back to another episode of The Whole Journey. And I will see you next week, and on socials and on Substack. And yeah, stay connected, stay with us. Let's keep on this journey together, and I will see you later.